I'm Rachel Edden.
And I'm Miles Stokes.
And we're the co-hosts of Rachel and Miles Explain the X-Men, a weekly podcast where we walk listeners through the ins, the outs, and the retcons of our favorite superhero soap opera.
We're also the hosts of Rachel and Miles Review the X-Men,
which you're watching right now.
Now, we were out last week, which means we have an extra large helping of X-Books this time around. So, what should we do first?
I think we should start with the ones we missed last week. You want to dive in?
Okay, September 10th, let's do it. So first up, we have Magneto number 9 by Cullen Bunn and Gabriel Hernandez Walta. So this book, it hasn't really sold me so far until really right around this issue. It's a very dark and brutal book. Not dark and gritty and violent like Wolverine, but more of a just sort of bleak and gray kind of book.
Very noir.
Yeah. Now, in this one...
At least in tone, if not aesthetic.
Magneto goes to track down some people who are doing very bad things to mutants. Turns out it's the Red Skull with basically a mutant concentration camp. And Magneto attacks them and loses. He's got much lower powers, and he just straight up loses. Now, so obviously the concentration camps and such are a big part of Magneto's backstory. This could be super tasteless, but with this, it actually works. It's actually kind of restrained in a way that I really dig.
It also goes into a lot of Magneto's complex relationship with Genosha, which I dug. It's a lead into Axis, and I am just not sold on that crossover. I don't know. Miles, you said you really liked it, and this book really sold you on it. I'm not there yet.
I like what I'm seeing. We'll see if the crossover itself is any good. What's next?
Next up, we have Death of Wolverine number 2. This is written by Charles Soule, penciled by Steve McNiven, with inks by Jay Leiston, and colors by Justin Ponzer. And I'm mentioning the whole creative team and making a point of doing that because it's a book where there's really just terrific creative alchemy throughout. This is a series, the first issue of which really positively surprised us, and it's continuing very much in that vein. Number 2 doesn't have quite as much punch as number 1, but it's definitely to the same standards of quality, and it's as interesting, and it's got me as invested in where the series is going, if not more so.
What I really liked is we get to see Wolverine in full-on patch mode, just being sort of a sleazy, manipulative semi-criminal who's way stylish.
Well, he's not exactly patch, he's Beard Wolverine, which is another thing that is just superlative in this issue.
Wolverbeard!
He also looks just like someone we know with the beard, which is kind of great.
Also, snicked! Next is Nightcrawler number 6 by Chris Claremont and Ted Nauk. Now, we've mentioned that this book is sort of driven by nostalgia. Obviously, it's Chris Claremont who is responsible for the most famed era in all of X-Men back in the 70s and 80s. And unfortunately, what this issue right here does is just make me miss the 70s and 80s. It just doesn't really have the same heart, unfortunately. Nightcrawler's tracking down a new mutant who's being attacked by the Crimson Pirates, who really just make me miss TechNet from the old Excalibur days. And he's being accompanied by Scorpion Boy, who's a student at the Institute, who unfortunately doesn't really have much of a personality other than plucky. We've had some good issues of Nightcrawler. This, unfortunately, really isn't one. Here's hoping it improves.
All right, our final book of the September 10th batch is X-Force number 9, written by Simon Spurrier, drawn by Rock Hae Kim. This is the end of an arc. If you're looking to jump on the title, jump on with 10, not 9. And it's a good conclusion. It's a really good conclusion. It's not really quite as strong as the book's been so far. We've really been loving this book, and I think that's mostly because this issue is really kind of a grand melee with a huge cast. Spurrier and Kim both have very strong authorial voices, and the trouble with that is that it can sometimes overwrite characters. It's a delicate balance to strike, and it's much, much, much more critical when you have 12 or 13 or 15 characters running around and yelling on a page, which happens here.
That said, when the characters are there, the yelling that they do is still really entertaining. We have characters like Pete Wisdom and Marrow and Dr. Nemesis, and they all have that trademark Spurrier voice, which I never get sick of.
Yeah, it's a fun book. It's a good book. This issue, again, I think just really, really didn't play to the strengths of the creative team. So, let's blaze through our issue and panel of last week so we can jump into the current stuff. What was our issue of the week?
Magneto number 9, I would say. It has a unique, distinct feel, very gray and ugly and painful, that I'm really, really digging right now. I hope it keeps that up. What about our panel of the week?
I am really, really digging the splash reveal of sort of dissolute Wolverine with a beard from Death of Wolverine number 2. A lot of fun. Great panel, well put together. This is how you do a splash reveal. Okay, that's it for last week. What have we got this week?
So this week, which is to say the week of September 17th, we have, first off, Wolverine and the X-Men, number 9. This is by Jason Latour and Jorge Fornes. And first of all, I want to just point out how awesome this cover is. I love the expression on Quire's face. I love it so much.
Yeah, Marvel's been making a jump in the last couple years to more conceptual covers, which I really like. There was a trend for a long time that comics covers should be like super literal and very directly reflect the issue. And these have kind of been going outside that. I mean, the long series of all new makeouts is a pretty good example, too. But yeah, Uncanny does that well this week, too.
All new makeouts is going to be the new comic I write. Anyway.
It practically really, it should just be called that anyway.
So in this issue, it's Quentin Quire's 17th birthday. He's ditched the X-Men after seeing these revelations about his horrible future. He now owns a branch of the Hellfire Club, and Wolverine is trying to bust into the party to basically talk him out of this path he's on. So it's a mutant type costume party.
It's specifically an X-Men cosplay party. It's on the invitation.
Yeah, and so at one point, a couple of the guards are talking. They're dressed like Sabretooth, and one of them says, "Hey, I bet you anything that was really Maggot." And the other says, "I mean, who would dress up like Maggot?"
There are people cosplay Maggot. I've seen at least one Maggot cosplay.
Poor Maggot.
He's a good character. Come on.
But anyway, what I really like about this issue is that Wolverine goes in here to talk Quentin out of this, and he doesn't. Quentin is completely unmoved and sticks some goons on Wolverine using his telepathy, and Wolverine gets the crap kicked out of him and basically leaves almost in shame. It's a really kind of dark downer ending, which I think kind of works as the end of Quentin Quire's story for the time being.
Yeah, I agree. I haven't really loved what this book has done with that arc, but as a conclusion, this is great. Our second book this week is All New X-Men number 32, written by Brian Michael Bendis, drawn by Mahmoud Asrar. And man, it's great. I am enjoying the hell out of this book. I'm enjoying the hell out of this run. It's fun and it's really high stakes at the same time, and that's such a rare combo and such a hard one to nail, and it's doing it. It's doing it beautifully.
Yeah, it reminds me a lot actually of Old New Mutants in that regard.
And speaking of New Mutants, or at least new to the X-Men, not exactly mutants, this is the arc that's going to bring Miles Morales. It's the Spider-Man of... No, sweetie, you don't get to be in the X-Men yet. I'm sorry. Anyway, this is the arc that's going to bring Miles Morales, who's the Spider-Man of the Ultimate Universe, into the 616 as a member of the all-new X-Men. And yeah, and so that's what it's doing. And something that Miles Stokes noticed when we were going through this issue that we didn't catch last week, that's just a subtle, really cool tweak, is so the Ultimate Universe is lettered in mixed case. 616 is usually lettered in all caps. It switches to mixed case lettering dialogue when they go to the Ultimate Universe, which is
love that.
Yeah, it's super subtle. It's one of those things that I didn't, actually neither of us picked up on last week. Miles caught this week. And yeah, it's really clever, which I think is indicative of the whole book. There are a lot of just subtle, fun, nice things, and it's good. It's great. You should be reading it.
Okay, next up we have Uncanny Avengers number 24, written by Rick Remender, drawn by Salvador Larroca. So this is another kind of lead up to Axis kind of event. It involves the Red Skull's concentration camp, where he's got a lot of mutant prisoners guarded over by his X-Men. Right? Yeah, Genosha, which has a whole lot of history, especially with Magneto, who, as we recall from the last Magneto issue, is now a prisoner here after unsuccessfully trying to attack.
Yeah, this is pretty much a direct sequel to the last issue of Magneto number 9.
Yeah, so in this one, the Uncanny Avengers are still kind of fresh out of their mission in the alternate universe they were in before, and we see Havoc and the Scarlet Witch and Rogue end up in this concentration camp after they get captured. There's some creepy visions where Rogue sees like a Xavier with his head mostly gone, who's the residual ghost of psychic something. Overall, I think it works. I like Larroca on art with Remender. I like that more realistic, but still very airbrushed, almost cartoony style. And I do like the way he gets some of the characters' voices, especially Xavier and especially Magneto.
Yeah, man. Remender writes Magneto really well. And yeah, that's part of my trouble with this issue, is there's a lot in it that's good, but it still feels to me like an okay-ish book with some really good elements. They're not defining enough, and they're not cohesive enough to really define the series for me yet.
Yeah, for me, this is a book where I'm just seeing lots and lots of potential that's coming through a little bit more every issue, so I'm staying really optimistic about this one, but we'll see.
Next, we've got All New X-Factor 14. This is written by Peter David. It is drawn by Pop Mon and Scott Hanna, colored by Lee Luffridge. And, the thing about this book, if it's a Peter David book and Peter David's X-Factor, consistently it's been the writing and not the art that's the draw, and that's continuing to be the case. The art isn't as strong as I'd like it to be. The writing is top-notch, and I think the writing is at its best because it's really focusing on characters that David enjoys writing and that he can play off one another well. In this case, Polaris, Danger, and Scarlet Witch.
Yeah, you mentioned last time, Rachel, that X-Factor works best when it's sort of a sitcom,
yeah.
And this definitely is. It's like a ladies' day out, and it's hilarious.
Framed by Danger's quest to get laid.
Yeah.
Which, Danger is exactly as good as the foils she's played off against, and, Scarlet Witch and Polaris make great foils for Danger. It's a fun issue. They go to a Renaissance fair, they go to bars, they get in fights. It's not momentous. It's a good sitcom.
So finally, we have Uncanny X-Men number 26 by Brian Bendis and Chris Anka.
And I mentioned when we talked about Wolverine and the X-Men, the sort of cool symbolic and representational covers. This is another one of those, and yeah, they're nailing it.
Love it. So this one, it feels kind of like a point A to point B book for me. There aren't a lot of big events that move the story forward, but there's a lot of good character work. I think it works as a chapter in a larger whole very well.
Yeah, I disagree. I don't think it's a point A to point B thing. I think it's just that the focus this time is on the emotional beats and the characters rather than advancing the plot.
That could be, and speaking of those emotional beats, we see a side of Iceman that I don't think I've ever seen, with him just being furious at Scott Summers for everything that's gone down. Iceman's always been the heart of the X-Men, and it's rare that we ever see him anything but chill and facetious. This works really well.
Yeah, that's mostly dialogue. On the other side of it, in Chris Anka's art, you see Cyclops just crumble in a series of wordless panels over the course of this issue, and it's super effective. I can use this visual storytelling. It's super effective.
We also see Maria Hill of S.H.I.E.L.D. Freaking out more and more, which I never get sick of personally.
Yeah, man, Maria Hill freaks out awesome. Remember the time she turned the X-Men blew up the moon?
I do.
They would. They'd come
so
close.
What really works for me in this issue, though, is the last part of it, which is the sort of trainees, the younger students at Cyclops' school. They're doing a danger room exercise fighting the Avengers, and they start talking about that. So we have this character, Triage, who says at one point to one of the Stepford Cuckoos, Celeste, I'm saying, if we're training to fight the Avengers, if we're training to fight the good guys, what does that make us?
Revolutionaries.
And that really sums up this book for me. That it can feel like All New and Uncanny are the same book sometimes, going month to month. Right now, their identities are really diverging, and that statement right there is what this one's about.
Yeah,
I love it.
They've really split, and each really has its own visual and narrative voice in a way they haven't before in the last arc, and I'm really enjoying that. Before we were saying you should get both of them because they interlock so much. At this point, I'd say to get both of them because they're two of the best X books coming out.
So that wraps up our reviews for the current week. Rachel, what's our issue of the week?
Our issue of this week, I think, is unquestionably All New X-Men 32. It's a pitch-perfect book on every note. It's fun, it's engaging, it's high stakes, and it's very deliberate in its storytelling. It sets out to do very specific stuff, and it does it exquisitely. What's our panel?
Panel of the week is actually from the same issue. It's the 2-page spread where Jean Grey is reading Miles Morales' mind. And Rachel, you said we've seen this before, right? We have.
We have seen an identical layout. The first time Jean Grey accidentally read Beast's mind when her telepathic powers kicked on. This is obviously, I'm not going to say the same trick recycled because it's obviously supposed to reference and call that up. But it's a beautiful layout. It was a beautiful layout the first time. It's a beautiful layout the second time. The tone's really different this time, which I think is a good change.
Yeah, it really shows well how overwhelming it would be for both the mind reader and the mind readee in the situation, especially given the revelation that, wait, this isn't the world I thought I was in.
But it comes across like an overwhelming montage, not like the cacophony of Jean's first experience with that. And that's a difference that plays, I think, very well and is what makes the callback effective. All right, and that is it, not only for this week, but for last week as well.
Please check out our podcast, Rachel and Miles Explain the X-Men. New episodes go up on Thursdays at comicsalliance.com and on Sundays at rachelandmiles.com on iTunes and on Stitcher.
Currently up at Comics Alliance, you can check out our newest episode where we dive into one of our very favorite X books, The New Mutants.
Thank you, as always, to all of our Patreon supporters. We would not be doing these reviews without you. We really appreciate you all. And thanks to everybody for watching.
See you next week. Hey Miles, is there anything we can use for a tag for this? Because nothing's really sticking out from the outtakes.
I don't know, just do something funny.
What do I do?
Just do something.